Here we are on the most important day of the Christian liturgical calendar. That day of the poem, "The Cave Tomb is Empty." The story was spread by word of mouth for years before it was written down and marks the end of the Gospel of Mark, the oldest of the Gospels. It appears in the other three Gospels, and just like any other tale told over and over, it is different in each of the later versions, seeming to address concerns about how, who, and etc. Nevertheless, this is where the promise of everlasting life is derived. Reverend Teresa G. Cooley's sermon, "The Empty Tomb," summarizes the speaking career of Jesus so well, I could even see that he had to die. Please allow me to read her opening paragraph. Quote, "So there they were, a ragtag group of people who had never been singled out in their lives. A fisherman, a prostitute, people who were hardly ever considered special. Suddenly, they were part of something more incredible than they could imagine. This extraordinary man had come into their lives and they followed him, not even really knowing why. Their lives now felt important. They understood things that they never really knew before. It was like a gray cloth had been pulled aside, and behind it was this brand new, sparkling world full of adventure," unquote. Actually, there were a number of women led by the disciple Mary of Magdala, also known as Mary Magdalene, described as having a serious illness that many linked to her sexuality and is represented as a sinful woman, thanks to Pope Gregory I. Other Christian traditions treat her as an apostle to the apostles, and in some, she is a saint. In 1969, Pope Paul VI officially separated the identification of Mary Magdalene from that of Mary of Bethany and the sinful woman who washed the feet of Jesus at the Last Supper. Among the male disciples, there were as many as 7 fishermen, a tax collector, probably some small businessmen, and one politically astute man that formed the group. But that does not take away from her sermon. This ragtag group of people started out small, but began attracting larger and larger crowds. The extraordinary man became more and more outspoken in his criticisms of the people in power, and he became a danger to the status quo. The crowds were so large that the politically astute disciple wanted the man to use his growing power politically. And when the man refused, the politic disciple ratted him out. Now, do not get angry with Judas. If he had not done the dastardly deed, there would not have been the crucifixion, the burial, nor the empty tomb. Now, would Christianity hold the same allure without the promise of everlasting life? While there are Christian Unitarian Universalists, many UUs think of Easter as a time to celebrate rebirth in the natural world, spring. This is the time of year when many animals have their young and plants sprout new growth, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. I have claret cups starting to bloom, white-winged doves attempting to build their sloppy nest in the most ridiculous places. Grasses sprouting, hummingbirds arriving, reviving red-hot pokers, and the javelinas are back with their young. A general new birth, the miracle of life. Just before Thanksgiving of 2020, my wife ordered amaryllis bulbs on the theory, excuse me, on the theory that they would bloom before Christmas. They didn't. But when they did bloom, they put on quite a show. So much so that we decided that we would keep them for the following year. When the weather warmed up, we would move them outside, cut them back at the appropriate time, you know. We followed the directions for having them for the next season. Nothing happened. Not one hint of green. We put them outside with the idea we would reuse the nice planter they came in for something or other. Frankly, out of sight, out of mind. We forgot all about that thing, and now, 17 months later, they are greening up. Rebirth, the miracle of life. Jeff Lott, one of our original neighbors when we moved here, told me not to dig up or throw away a plant just because it seems spent or dead. Give it a couple of years and it may surprise you. It did. The rebirth can also refer to ourselves. 2 weeks ago, I attended the first in a series of memorial services related to this church. Our personal calendars have 4 celebrations this coming week, and unfortunately, we cannot attend them all. However, 2 weeks ago, I attended Reverend Dr. Dale Robeson's memorial service, and his oldest daughter, Heather Roon, talked about her father's life as one of continuing changes. To emphasize this, she read from one of his old sermons. As I listened, the words resonated with thoughts of rebirth, renewal, Easter. So I asked her if I may quote her father today. With Heather's permission, I will read from Dale's sermon on changes. Quote, as I moved in my education to more progressive schools, I was on my way to a freer step and broader view than I had ever known before. And along the way, my heart and mind were opening to new thoughts and feelings. I went from a belief in miracles to Emerson's persuasion that life itself is a miracle. My most soul-shaking experience was when the burden lifted off my spirit and the Western, patriarchal, vengeful, mostly absent God was eclipsed by the formerly unknown brightness of religious freedom. I find the wonderful in a walk around a lake, a sublime masterwork of music or art, a jaw-dropping film, the joy of reading poetry, the crazy exuberance of my little terrier, a winter's fire, a trip with my spouse, and being with family and friends, unquote. That was Dale. And I know that some of us here in the sanctuary and out in Zoom space identify with some, if not all, of what I just read. We do not have to wait for spring to make changes in our behaviors, but since it is Easter, it is spring, the world can be a beautiful, wondrous place, especially as long as the jelly beans hold up. Let me close with this lyric from Man in the Mirror, a song recorded by the troubled man-child singer-songwriter Michael Jackson, with lyrics and music by Glenn Ballard and Saida Garrett, produced by Jackson and Quincy Jones. No message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change.
Easter, a time of renewal and hope, is a perfect time to think about what you can give back. The operation and outreach of our church, our needs your input and your contributions. In a moment, the greeters will pass among you with the offering baskets. Please give generously. But before they do, let me remind you that our church supports organizations that are identified by the Social Justice Committee with our Change for Change program. This quarter's recipient for Change is the Lutheran Family Services, an official resettlement center for refugees. Resettlement involves finding and furnishing housing, providing English language classes, conducting cultural orientation, providing job counseling, and assisting with legal paperwork. So please give generously. If you're looking for a spiritual home and are sympathetic with Unitarian Universalist principles and values, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces may be the place for you. We believe that when you become a member, you are joining in a warm and deep relationship with the church and all of our members and friends. You are becoming part of something bigger than any of us. You're becoming part of a movement to change our community and change the world. There are several ways you can do this. Speak to one of us after the service today. Leave a message at the church on the phone, or use the virtual membership book through the link in the electronic order of service. Please join me in extinguishing the flame using the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of me, or the fire